I never thought I'd be the kind of woman who'd end up here, telling this story. My life for the most part has been ordinary. I married my college boyfriend at 23. We had our son 2 years later. Then another child a few years after. We moved into a quiet neighborhood, the kind with trimmed lawns and nosy neighbors. From the outside everything looked fine. But that's the thing about appearances, they don't show you the cracks. My husband, Dan, is a good man. Provider, hard worker, never raised his voice. But he's also emotionally absent. Somewhere along the way between promotions and deadlines, I became invisible to him. Our conversations turned into logistical checklists. Groceries, school events, bills. Affection was reduced to pecks on the cheek and scheduled intimacy, if any. I don't remember the last time he looked at me like a woman. Just a function. Role. 6 months ago, I injured my back while moving a box in the garage. It wasn't serious, but it made certain movements painful. I couldn't bend properly, couldn't drive, couldn't cook without wincing. Dan, as usual, was busy, traveling between cities for work, taking calls during dinner. But my son Jason stepped up. 16, tall for his age, athletic build, quiet but attentive. He noticed when I winced, offered to help with chores, made me tea without asking. When the doctor suggested light massage to relieve tension, he volunteered. Started simple. I'd lie on the bed, clothed, and he'd sit beside me, pressing gently into my shoulders and lower back. At first it felt like a chore, awkward, clinical. But over time, his hands grew more confident. He listened when I explained pressure points. He cared. That's what hit me hardest, he cared. Something Dan hadn't shown in years. I didn't see it then. I swear I didn't. But in retrospect, I think I began craving those moments. Not in a twisted way, at least not initially. Just comfort. Safe place. He would ask me how I was feeling, and I'd find myself opening up, talking about my day, my dreams, even things I hadn't told anyone in years. He never judged, just listened. His presence filled a gap I hadn't realized was so wide. It's strange how things build without you noticing. The massages became routine, almost sacred. He'd dim the lights, play soft music, help me relax. I looked forward to them, to the quiet, to being seen. And sometimes I'd catch myself staring at him, noticing the stubble on his jawline, the curve of his smile. I hated myself for it, brushed it off as misplaced affection, maternal pride maybe. That's what I told myself. But deep down something else was brewing, something I didn't want to name. I dismissed it. Had to. This was my son. My baby. But feelings don't care about titles or boundaries. I just exist, waiting for a moment to surface. And mine was coming faster than I could stop it. It was a Friday evening when something shifted. The massage started like usual, but the silence felt heavier, like both of us were thinking the same thing and refusing to say it. His hands lingered longer than usual. Not in an obvious way, but enough that I noticed. I told myself I was imagining it. But I wasn't. There was a new kind of tension, not from my back, but in the air between us. He pressed his thumbs into a tight knot in my lower back, and I exhaled sharply. He paused, then asked if it hurt. I said no, not really. There was a pause. Then softly he said, "You should smile more. You look really pretty when you do." I laughed awkwardly, brushing it off, but my heart was already racing. Compliments weren't common in my world anymore. I couldn't remember the last time Dan said something like that. I chalked it up to Jason trying to be sweet, but the words stayed with me longer than they should have. Over the next few days I found myself thinking about that moment. Not obsessively, but enough. Enough to make me feel uncomfortable in my own skin. I started paying more attention to what I wore around the house. I checked my reflection more often. It was subtle, and I told myself I was just trying to feel good. Nothing more. But I also started noticing how he looked at me. Not often, but every now and then there was something in his eyes. Curiosity, confusion, maybe even desire. I hated myself for not shutting it down. Instead, I pretended I didn't see it. That's what made it easier to keep happening. Pretending. One afternoon, while I sat at the kitchen table, he walked past and casually brushed his hand against my shoulder. There was no reason for it. It wasn't part of the routine. It wasn't necessary. I didn't stop him. I didn't say anything. But I felt it, and I think he knew I did. We'd crossed something invisible. That night, during the massage, I realized I had stopped thinking about the pain in my back. I was hyper-aware of everything else. His touch, my breathing, the sound of his voice. At one point, his hands moved just a little higher than usual. Not inappropriate, but not normal either. I didn't correct him. I froze, unsure if I wanted him to stop. Later, alone in my room, I felt sick. I told myself nothing happened. That I was being dramatic. That it was a mother reading too much into things. But deep down, I knew I'd let something happen. A boundary shifted. The kind of shift that doesn't just snap back into place. I started dreaming about him. Not sexual dreams, but emotional ones. Dreams where he held me, where I cried into his chest, where he told me he loved me. I'd wake up feeling empty, ashamed, and yet strangely comforted. I was losing control of a situation I never should have allowed in the first place. And worse, I didn't know how, or if I even wanted to stop it. It happened 3 weeks later, felt unreal. On a night that everything looked the same on the outside, but the routine was the same. I couldn't but sleep. My thoughts were louder. I couldn't eat. I'd spent the day trying to convince myself. I kept telling myself it was a mistake. I told myself I'd end it. Maybe if I acted like it never happened, it would disappear. But the moment I heard his voice, saw the softness in his eyes. Every glance, every silence between us reminded me. I laid down, pretending everything to help with my back, while inside I was shaking. Sitting next to me. His hands barely slower than usual, more deliberate, and somehow neither of us hurt more than anything else. There was something heavy in the silence. Dan came back from his trip 2 days later. When he reached the small of my back, he didn't notice. I felt his touch hesitate, or maybe he didn't care to look closely. Then he kept going. He asked how things were, scrolled through his phone, said he was tired. Not a kiss, not a word, watched him move around our home like nothing had shifted, but undeniable. While inside I was crumbling. My body said yes before my mind could say anything. Tell him this didn't just happen in a vacuum, into the contact. That his absence felt natural, terrifying, and wrong. But I didn't. My heart was pounding so like I always did. I wondered if he could hear it. Jason started staying when his hand brushed along my side, leaving the house not in a rush or a grab. Just when we crossed paths, I still didn't move. I felt the tip of his finger pause, just guilt, like he was asking a question I couldn't answer. I wanted to fix it, to talk to him, and I felt but I didn't know how to say the words. I turned my head only slightly. Sorry I let you in too close. To meet his eyes. Sorry I needed something you shouldn't have had to give. Sorry I failed at being a mother. Is this okay? I started having panic in the most fragile voice I'd ever heard come from myself in the laundry room, the bathroom, anywhere I could be alone. It wasn't urgent. The shame wasn't just about the act. It was careful. It was about what it said about me. Like he didn't want to scare me. About the life I thought I had. Like he was afraid of what it meant. About the emptiness I had ignored for years. My first instinct was to pull away. I tried to journal, to fix everything. Tried to write down what I was feeling, hoping it would make it less real. And when I did, I felt something made it worse. Not in a dramatic black and white, felt just like a quiet collapse of everything I thought I was. Eventually, I started writing everything I couldn't breathe. Not just what happened, at him, but waiting for him to apologize, years of being dismissed, to say it was a mistake, loneliness, the craving for touch, the hunger for affection. He just looked at me. I wasn't excusing full of concern, just like trying to understand more afraid for me than himself. Because if I didn't, I stood up, didn't say a word, grip I had on myself. I never planned to share it, sat on the floor, but writing made it feel like I wasn't drowning in silence. Not because of what had happened. Some nights because I didn't feel the horror I thought I should sky, wondering what kind of person I felt wanted, whether I can ever look at my son without remembering that moment. The next day he didn't come near me. Whether he'll carry it with him forever. He barely made eye contact. I think about the future, about the lies I have to keep telling to keep this house from breaking. We crossed a line that couldn't be undone. And I wonder how many other women sit in kitchens just like mine. It was carrying secrets that never leave their body without words. I'm not proud. We had broken something sacred for sympathy, and now we just needed to say it, knowing, remembering, pretending. To anyone. And because I still hadn't told anyone, erase what's been not done. Even myself, just buries it not out loud. And I've run out of places to hide it. I'd never be able to pretend it hadn't happened. The days that followed felt unreal. Everything looked the same on the outside, but I wasn't. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I avoided mirrors. I kept telling myself it was a mistake, that it would fade, that maybe if I acted like it never happened, it would disappear. But it didn't. Clung to me. Every glance, every silence between us reminded me. He stopped offering to help with my back. Stopped sitting next to me. Barely spoke unless spoken to. And somehow that hurt more than anything else. Dan came back from his trip 2 days later. He didn't notice anything different. Or maybe he didn't care to look closely. He asked how things were, scrolled through his phone, said he was tired. I watched him move around our home like nothing had shifted, while inside I was crumbling. I wanted to scream at him, tell him this didn't just happen in a vacuum, that his absence made space for this. But I didn't. I stayed quiet like I always did. Jason started staying in his room more, leaving the house early, coming home late. When we crossed paths, he looked through me. Not with anger, not with hate, just guilt. Heavy, suffocating guilt. I wanted to fix it, to talk to him, but I didn't know how to say the words. What do you even say? Sorry I let you in too close. Sorry I needed something you shouldn't have had to give. Sorry I failed at being a mother. I started having panic attacks. Short bursts of breathlessness in the laundry room, the bathroom, anywhere I could be alone. The shame wasn't just about the act. It was about what it said about me. About the life I thought I had. About the emptiness I had ignored for years. I tried to journal, tried to write down what I was feeling, hoping it would make it less real. But the words made it worse. Seeing them in black and white felt like confession. Evidence. Eventually I started writing everything down. Not just what happened, but why. The years of being dismissed, the loneliness, the craving for touch, the hunger for affection. I wasn't excusing it. Just trying to understand it. Because if I didn't, I'd lose what little grip I had on myself. I never planned to share it. But writing made it feel like I wasn't drowning in silence. Some nights I sit outside staring at the sky, wondering what kind of person I've become. Whether I can ever look at my son without remembering that moment. Whether he'll carry it with him forever. I think about the future, about the lies I have to keep telling to keep this house from breaking. And I wonder how many other women sit in kitchens just like mine, carrying secrets that never leave their bodies. I'm not proud. I'm not asking for sympathy. I just needed to say it. To someone. To anyone. Because silence doesn't erase what's been done. Just buries it deeper. And I've run out of places to hide it.